Hey Steve, I'm an avid viewer of your channel and want to thank you for the platform you have created for experiencers of these beings to share their stories. It has taken me several days to put this email together, as it has brought back a lot of upsetting memories that I've tried to suppress over the years. I'm a down-to-earth and honest person and have no need to lie or make up stories. That being said, I have an experience that I would like to share with you. I've held on to this for around 33 years. And with the exception of my granddad, I've never told anyone a soul. Sorry, I've never told another soul. I grew up in a small village in the countryside of northwest of England. My mother and father split when I was around 3 years old. I stayed with my mom, but she was largely absent for most of my youth, and I was basically raised by my granddad, whom I lived with until he passed away. Growing up, I had two best friends. The world was a safe place back then, and on weekends and during holidays, my two friends and I would play outside in the woods from early morning until after sunset. It was during the school summer holidays of '87 that this incident took place, and I was 8 years old at the time. And what I'm about to tell you is unbelievable and makes no sense to me even now, but I think the time has come to share it. On the morning that this happened, I went around to call for my two friends to see if they wanted to come out and play. There was an area of woodland at the top of the village where a huge old oak tree had been struck by lightning and partially fallen down. My friends and I had claimed this area as our own little playground, as the half of the tree that had fallen was really good for climbing and making tree houses and dens. And we had christened it the Base, due to it being the place we started the majority of our childhood adventures from. It turned out that one of my friends wasn't feeling well, so wasn't allowed to play, and the other had gone shopping with his mom, so that day I headed out to the base alone. To get to the fallen tree, I had to walk through a large field which was periodically maintained, but at the time the grass hadn't been cut and was around 3 feet high. The fallen tree was part of a larger copse of trees along the bottom edge of this field, and the lighter wood where the tree had split apart was visible through the overhanging branches of the surrounding trees from about halfway across the field. As I got to the middle of the field, I looked towards the base to see if I could see any other kids there, and I realized that I couldn't see the lighter wood of the fallen tree, but in its place, all I could see was brown. My 8-year-old mind couldn't process this, and the best I would come up with was that the tree had somehow grown its bark back since I was last there just a few days before. I was intrigued and took a few steps forward when an overwhelming sense of fear came over me and stopped me in my tracks. At this point, I couldn't see anything, but somehow I knew that something was very wrong, and that something was near to the base. As I stared towards the base, I realized that there was something brown obscuring my view of the fallen tree, and that it had started to move. The thing that was standing there had its back to me, and the second I realized this, it slowly turned to face me, and it was at that point that I knew I was in trouble. I realized that the brown I could see was hair, not fur, but hair, about 4 inches long, and it was exactly the same color as the tree bark. I couldn't tell if the hair was different colors or uniformly brown, with dead leaves and branches and such in it, but from a distance, it would have been invisible to anyone looking. I couldn't move. My limbs felt like lead, and I could feel my heart beating in my ears. Every fiber of my being was telling me to run, but I was so scared, I was rooted to that spot. The thing squatted down similar to how a sumo wrestler does before a fight. I couldn't see its head or face, as it was obscured by the overhanging branches, but I got a clear view of its chest, stomach, and arms. The hair on its chest and stomach was slightly shorter than the hair on its back and arms, and a bit lighter in color, and it was huge. Easily 4 feet across the shoulders, and at least 8 feet tall in its squatting position. Jesus, that's big. Keep in mind that at 8 years old, I'd never seen or heard anything like this before in my life. To me, this thing was a monster, plain and simple. Its shoulders and biceps were absolutely massive, and my only point of reference was that this thing was like the Incredible Hulk, but with hair. I was about 30 feet or so from it, and I was so scared that I didn't even realize I had started to cry. If this wasn't unbelievable enough, it brought its hands together in front of its chest, making a circle shape with its thumbs and fingers. In the middle of this circle appeared a ball of pure white light, which I now know to be an orb, but at that time I likened it to a floating crystal ball. The being stood up and dropped its arms down as it did so. Sorry, one more time. Oh yeah, okay. So the being stood up and dropped its arms down as it did so. Its hands were close to being level with its knees, and the orb stayed in the same position where it had appeared, and rose with the creature when it stood. There was no sound as this happened. No birds singing, no grasshoppers chirping, and even though I could feel the breeze and see the grass and the leaves on the branches moving, there was just deafening silence. I don't know how long this all took, but I realized I had been holding my breath as all this happened. I exhaled hard, and as I did so, a crystal clear thought flashed through my mind. Quote, "If you don't run now, you'll never see home again." End quote. I don't know how to explain where this thought came from, but I know for a fact it wasn't mine. At this moment, I felt a familiar nuzzling in my armpit and realized that Hobo, my granddad's Irish wolfhound, was behind me. I don't know how he got out and didn't realize he had followed me. He put his head beside my left shoulder and began growling and snarling, and this somehow snapped me out of the trance I was in. I turned and sprinted as fast as I could back through the field and didn't look back. I don't know when I pissed myself, but I realized that I had when I was halfway home. I was crying so hard that I could barely breathe. Hobo ran beside me all the way home. When I got back home, it took my granddad about an hour or so to calm me down and explain to him what had happened. He responded by giving me the worst beating he had ever given me in my life and sending me to my room. He then left the house telling me not to move and didn't return for about a half an hour. When he did return, he came into my room and he sat on my bed. He hugged me and comforted me while I began to cry again. I was scared and confused. He told me that I had seen the wood woes, pronounced wood woes, that I had to stay indoors for the rest of the summer, that I was forbidden from ever playing at that base again. Needless to say, I never went back there. Before this happened, I was a happy, outgoing kid, but this experience made me withdrawn and timid. I asked my granddad what the wood woes was, and he told me that he was the tall, hairy man who guards the woods. He said that he scares grown-ups away and sometimes takes kids to a place in the woods where they're never ever seen again. At the time, I had no reason to doubt my granddad. He had raised me and was the only father figure I had when growing up. I think he beat me because he was scared and angry at what had happened to me and took these feelings out on me. I don't blame him for it, and I will never think any less of him for it. I didn't even hear the term Bigfoot until years later at a high school when I found a book on unexplained mysteries and cryptids. I have since learned the stories of the wood woes go back to the 15th century. It is referred to as the hairy man, the wild man of the woods, the faun, and sometimes the green man. I don't know if it is a Bigfoot / Sasquatch type being, or if it's related to these entities, but I know for a fact that there are things on this planet and in the woods and dark places that are beyond most people's understanding. I believe that my granddad also had some kind of encounter with one of those beings, although he never admitted it to the day he died. Anyway, that's my experience. It's okay if you choose not to share this, and if you don't believe me, that's okay as well. I mean, who would believe a story like that? After my granddad passed away, I had to grow up fast, and once I took control of my life, I stopped being scared and I stopped looking for answers. I've researched all the folklore I can find, and over the years I've been in every forest, up every mountain, and on every moor in England, Scotland, and Wales. I've never seen or experienced anything like that since that morning all those years ago. I decided to share this with you because I admire what you are doing. The more people that know about these things, the better. Today I am 41 years old and still researching and looking for answers. I still believe that if it wasn't for my granddad's dog, that thing would have taken me. I am a father of 2 children and talk openly with them about this topic, although I have never told either of them about the experience I had when I was a kid. I still live in the Cheshire countryside in the northwest of England, and the woods around where I live now are the playground of my kids and their friends. And I don't want them to be scared of the woods, but I do encourage them to be sensible. They never go anywhere alone and always take one of my working lurchers with them when they venture into the woods. Thank you for the platform. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep safe out there. Best wishes to you, your loved ones, and all those people searching for answers. Sincerely, Paul.
Just hold them down there for a little bit.
Tom Miller and his family have worked this Colorado ranch for 3 generations. There isn't much Tom doesn't know about rearing cattle. But recently, some strange things have been happening to his animals. One day, Tom finds one of his cows has died. On a cattle ranch, that's not unusual.
First, I thought it would just die naturally. And then I got closer to it and I could see it wasn't natural. The eyes were gone, the tongue was gone, the ears were gone, the sex organs were cut out. It's just kind of weird.
He notifies the local sheriff, who comes out to take a look. But there's nothing he can do. The case is shelved, but it remains a disturbing mystery.
I guess one of the strangest things is the laser cuts. Why is there no blood? How come body parts aren't strung around?
In 50 years of farming, Tom has never seen anything like this. It would be highly unusual for a predator to consume gallons of the animal's blood, but leave the carcass intact. Strangely, farmers all over the world are reporting similar mutilations. Ex-Deputy Sheriff Chuck Zukowski has investigated hundreds of mutilations. Who's doing it and why is still unknown. But now, Tom's recent case reveals new evidence.
What I'm seeing is the animal's picked up from one location, it's taken to a second location, the damage is being done at the second location, mutilation, the unusual incisions, the removal of the blood, and then the animal is being brought back.
Who or what could pick up an animal weighing over a ton, cut it up, drain its blood, transport it, and then drop it back to Earth without being seen?
I know some people think you're crazy if you say it's UFOs or something like that, or aliens, but I don't know what else it could be. I really don't.
Retired Sheriff Lee Gerardo of Los Alamos County, Colorado, is also convinced that UFOs and mutilations are connected.
A few years back, one rancher called me and said, you got to get out here, Sheriff. One of my steers is mutilated. And then 15, 20 minutes later, a bright orange light came up, about the size of a beach ball. He came up off the ground, then he split in two. But it got me with it the same size after they split.
Wow.
The one ball just went flying north. He just took off and he was gone in just a few seconds.
Did it make any type of sound?
Not even a humming sound. And I still think to this day, and it'd take a lot to convince me otherwise, it wasn't from this planet.
Whatever the cause, the mystery of livestock mutilation remains unexplained.